Hi, my name is Kaylin, and today we're going to be explaining the employee master file. We're basically going to work through the browse employee window, which is where you see all your employees. Now 95% of the information can be found in this window, so we're going to just go through that and explain a little bit about what each field is. If you click on your blue man, this will be your employee master file, or your browse employees window, as it's sometimes referred to. Here you would see then your list of employees. You can obviously then go and add new employees here, or you can change then current employees information, or then you can also then terminate or delete employees. So in the screen you can also, if you've got multiple employees, you can also do a find where you can actually go and search for certain employees. I obviously don't have too much information in this window. You also have a send to button. Any information that you are seeing on the screen you'll see on multiple windows. There is a send to button, which if you click that you can either then email it if your email settings have been set up, or send it to a file or Excel in multiple different formats. You can also send this directly to the printer if needs be. Like I said, the send to button sends anything that is currently on the screen to then your selected either printer or file or email. In the screen you can also go and choose your view of which employees you would like to view. If you have got any departments or categories or whatever set up, you can go and select, say you only want to see the admin department, and everybody that is in admin will now be displayed in this list. All non-terminated employees is exactly that. It shows all employees that have not been terminated as yet. All employees will include the terminated employees. So this is if, for argument's sake, you've by accidentally deleted an employee or terminated him rather, you can go and view all employees and just reinstate him. I'm going to leave that on all non-terminated. And then we're going to move on to adding an employee. I'm going to go through all these fields. We can just add another employee. Your employee number is obviously then his number that would usually be the payroll number, the one that links up with either VIP or MicroPay or whatever package you have. So we put in that employee number. Your title is obviously Mr. or Mrs. Let's just make this there. And your first name. Oops. And then obviously your last name. Now the pink fields that you have here is the required fields. So you need to have these fields filled in. Your ID number, you can put that in if needs be. Now you all know my ID number. And then your pay number, you can also put that in. If your employee number and your pay number, which is in VIP, is not the same, then you would pretty much use the pay number. This then can be set in the reports to actually be used instead of the employee number. Your employee number is still the main cheese here. You cannot have two employees with the same employee number. You can also go and enter a photo of the employee, and you can then, preferably if you've got a webcam or a digital camera, take the photos with that, save it in your data folder, and just go and select that photo then. Okay, so we move on to the shift screen. Here's where you would actually allocate the payroll shift that the employee is on. If you just click on the question mark, the list of your shifts depends on what has been set up by your consultant. So you would need to add one, specify from which date this shift would be applicable. Let's just say from the 1st of June, and on which shift will this employee be. You have a do not process shift, which basically means this employee can clock, but it will not work out any hours for him. So this is typically used for managers, or alike, that we'd like them to clock just to have a record, but not actually process any hours. I'm going to choose the day shift for this employee, and I'm going to leave this until forever that he's on this shift. Okay, so we can close that screen. And then you can also, I'm just going to click on OK to save this, and we'll change this information again. You can also go and override these shifts. So if, for argument's sake, you need to override his default shift pattern, in terms of one day he's perhaps starting slightly later, you can go and edit that start and end times and just make this 9 o'clock for argument's sake. You can also go and, there's obviously fixed daily shifts that have been set up according to the rules that you've provided to your consultant. But if you've got, let's say I've got a night shift as well, I can go and override the available daily shifts that are here. So if I'm just going to tick that, we go to our shift list. All the daily shifts that have been set up in the system will now be available. These are the ones that are currently set up with your daily shift that you've got assigned to him, which is the day shift, but you can go and allocate another night shift to that employee as well. I'm just going to untick these ones because I want it plain and simple. His shift. If we move on to the Access tab, this is basically used if you use access control. You can set up different time zones when this employee is allowed to clock and when he's not allowed to clock. These are also set up usually in the background in the configuration module. If it isn't set up, you can always then just check on the Docs website how to set this up, or then contact your consultant as well. The same with the access rights. If there is certain access rights to which areas he's allowed to clock, if you've got multiple clocks, this can be set up. Say he may clock at the workshop and at the turnstile, but he may not clock at the admin clock. You can set these access rights up and allocate that to the employee. On last day would be the last day's access rights that he has. Let's say, for argument's sake, you've got a access rights which says he can only clock at the turnstile. You can specify that he may, on the last day of his work day, he may only clock out at the turnstile. Your current area would be where he is currently, positioned. If you're adding him during the day, he's already come into the yard, he would then typically be inside. If you're adding him so that he starts clocking tomorrow, you would then put his current area as outside. There can also be multiple areas that are set up here depending on your site setup. This will also then usually be set up by your consultant in the configuration module. You can also go and set up advanced clock overrides, which you can go and specify then, more overrides in terms of which clocks, perhaps there's a turnstile which is purely access, and you would like to put an advanced override for the managers that this is their TNA clock, where they actually get the hours from. You can go and set that up. You can also then override any anti-passback settings. Generally, depending on the settings that have been set up on your clock itself, that will take priority unless you go and actually override this per employee. You can also then go and set up your only on in, you can set up anti-passback or enable it only on out. If we go to the classifications tab, this is where you would then obviously classify your employee according to the department or company that has been set up. I have done a training session previously on how to set up these departments, so if you don't have anything here and you'd like to use this, you're welcome to go and check out that video. So we can just then select our companies. You can select then your departments that you need to allocate this employee to. These classifications are basically used when you print reports. This is when it becomes nice to use. If you only want to print, your hours and clocking summary per department, just for the admin guys, just for the workers, the general workers, etc., you can obviously go and choose these categories in your reports. The same thing as in your Browse Employee screen where we went and selected all non-terminated. You can also go and select to only see the full-time staff for argument's sake. Okay, if we then go to the Employment tab, he has a few extra information in terms of his hire date, when he actually started working here. If you would like to keep a record of that, you can do that, and obviously then any information that is filled in, a person can then draw it out in a report, whether it be a default report that's already there, or if you would like a custom report set up to perhaps only print out everybody's hire date, that is before January last year, you can do that then. If you would like any custom reports, that would then be done by your consultant. You can put any extra remarks in if you would like. If you tick the no public holidays, this will then indicate to the system that this employee specifically does not get any public holiday hours if not worked. So if if your general rule on your shift is that the employees get their 8 hours or their 7.6 hours, and this specific employee does not get public holidays, you can tick that. Expected annual hours would be then the amount of hours that this employee needs to work on an annual basis. And then you have your terminating employee. Two ways to terminate an employee, by either using the remove button and following that wizard, or you can come in and tick terminate employee, specify your date, and if you would like to put in a reason, you can put the reason in there. If you use limit codes, in terms of there is a limit on the amount of hours that the employees can work, you can set up limit codes, and then this would be where this gets allocated. You have your annual leave, which is the amount of days. Now, this is not the advanced leave module. So basically what you allocate here is this guy gets 18 days leave for the whole year, and this leave period starts on, let's say, the 1st of Jan. Usually, typically, it would be when he's hired, his year would start, from then the 6th of the 6th. Going forward for the next year ahead, he would get then 18 days leave. The same with the sick leave, you also have your sick start date when that period. Now come this date next year again, the system will automatically allocate 18 days to this employee again. If we go to our medical tab, this is extra information regarding his medical information here. His last medical checkup date, you can, if you need to keep track of this, you can then enter that. Once again, any information that you fill in here can be drawn out of a report, so it is a nice feature to use. You can put his medical aid details in, the number, the condition, of this employee, who is his doctor, his phone number, and any extra medical comments if he's allergic to certain medication or something, for argument's sake. If we move on to the personal tab, also again, extra information. It's not a required field. Also just a nice to have. You can fill in his postal address, residential address, date of birth, phone, and emails if you need to, all those funny things. These email addresses that are here can then also be used in another section to actually email this employee. If you move on to the HR tab, you would fill in then the information regarding this employee's dependents, and any bank details and all that information here. So you can fill in how many kids he has, how many dependents, what payment method. This is once again also just extra information that you can use depending on the setup of your company, whether you would require any of this information. It's always just nice to have everything in one place. You can also specify his language, whether he's married, male or female. If we move on to the pension tab, then you will see there's also extra information regarding his pension scheme. So we had his aid, and now we've got his pension scheme. Put in his account number, the start date, contribution, all that information in one place. And then we can move on to the hierarchy, which is where you would specify if this employee supervises any employees, or if he is supervised by somebody. So if we had to say, let's go and add for this guy, and this person is supervised by our sample employee. You can, obviously, you've got multiple extra employees, you can say that this employee supervises so and so and so. You can add that to there. If you move on to the web tab, you can specify whether this employee has got access to the web interface. A little bit later on in the year, we'll be covering the web interface and explaining a little bit more about that. There is still information on the Docs website if you need to go and just read up a little bit on that. But you would fill in then his web login and the web password and whether they are a web administrator or not. Obviously, your IT guys would usually be then the web administrator. As a user, you would only have a login and a password. The clocks tabs is also then information for the CS time clocks for the that you would then fill in whether the employee has got access to the clock. So you would actually specify whether they are an administrator or supervisor, and then obviously put in the web password. You can also set the fingerprint security level here and the reader type. Now usually you would leave these two by default when adding an employee. Don't mess around too much with that. And then obviously your IT guys would also usually be then have access to the clock then. And then you have your biometrics tab, which has just got some reader type information and will definitely be used at a bit of a later stage. There's not too much information going on here now. So you can just click on OK, and this employee will be added. Now if we move on to the left-hand side, here you would then have your clockings window, which would typically then show all your clockings where you can add and change any clockings. You can also, you'll see once you actually have information here, I'm not sure that let's just see, I actually don't have any information for this employee, so we're not going to see anything. I'll just add a clocking quickly. Let's add this for the first. I'm going to leave it on 8 o'clock. Here's where you would see then all your clockings for that employee. You can also do a send to from the screen. As explained before, there is send to buttons on quite a few of the screens, which you can send this information that you're viewing to the send to the printer or to your file. You have your daily hours, which is where you will actually see then your each day's hours for your normal, your overtime. This is obviously calculated by the system according to your clockings that you have. Your daily rostering window would be where you actually then allocate the shift for the employee. If you use rostering, if you've got multiple shifts and they don't work a fixed pattern, you can go and roster the employees, on their specific pattern of which shift they work on what day. If we move on to the payroll hours, this screen, you would then see the hours that get exported to your payroll system if you do have if you're using that feature. This would basically be at the end of the week. If you pay weekly, you would see then their total normal hours, their overtime, and overtime too. Now these rules, the hours that get calculated here, are set up in the configuration module. This is also usually done by your TNA consultant, which sets up this rules of the shifts. If these hours aren't correct, you would need to contact your consultant and just specify to them to say, something doesn't look right here, these guys' hours are incorrect. It could be a shift setup that needs to be changed. In your leave screen, you would then locate any of your leave types, being sick or annual leave. You would add that in this screen. Once the leave has been added, it'll then, according to your shift setup, it'll generate the hours then in your daily hours window to either allocate this employee his 8 hours per day, or if he doesn't get hours, it'll do that then. Your warning screen is purely warnings. It doesn't affect the system in any way in terms of calculating the hours. These warnings are also set up according to your shift setup, whether the employee came in late or if he left in early. You can go and specify which warnings you would like to see. Once everything is listed here, you can then do a send to again. You can also excuse any warnings that have come here. Let's say this guy came in late and you excuse him and say, okay, I know he was late because he went to the doctor, for argument's sake. He came in a bit late. Now your errors is what actually affects your hours. You need to fix the errors before your daily hours can be calculated for that day, and as a result then, so that your payroll hours can be generated as well. If you have any errors in the screen, you would need to fix these errors. I'm just going to go and let's just change this high date back so I can show you, because I've added a clocking for the 1st. I think I made it the 1st of June. And let's go and check clockings. And I'm just going to click on process. Oops. Change and okay. Was the 1st of Jan. Let's change this clocking to the 1st of June. That we're a little bit more up to date. And then if there's only one clocking, immediately you'll see that there is an error. Like I said, you need to fix these errors so that it can generate the hours. You would see then all the errors in the screen for the specific employee, and you can actually go and fix this error, which will take you to where the problem is. And you can just then add another clocking for it to generate any hours. Okay, if we move on to the work section where we have cards, if you have allocated or if you need to allocate any cards, you can then highlight that employee, select cards, and you can go and assign then a card to this employee. If you need to go and add, if you don't have any cards in this list, this would need to be done in your configuration module, where you can actually add then, let's say you've got a new batch of cards that you need to add to the system, and that we will go into a little bit more detail in another training session. Okay, so if you then need to do your cards there, your payroll shifts, this is pretty much the same screen as when you went on your employee and you clicked on change. You can actually go and add your payroll shifts here, or go and change this, it works exactly the same as the other screen that we went through. You've got your charge rates as well. If you need to set up any charge rates for this employee specifically, you can go and add them in here. Well, obviously then you'd have to set up those charge codes once again in your configuration module, which you can then go and allocate to this employee. If we move on to the HR tab, you can see then there's also the dependents tab. Now this is pretty much the same as the other screen, except there you just, it's an extension of that screen in the sense that there you said this guy has got 3 dependents. Yeah, you can actually go and fill in each dependent's information, what their relationship is to him, and all the contact details, etc., etc. You can also then go and specify if there has been any disciplinary actions given to this employee. Let's say there was, a court case where this, something happened, or he got a verbal warning. You can actually go and keep record of this and link any documents that you need to this case as well. So let's say this guy had poor work performance, and this is the action that you took. You gave him a verbal warning. Who was it decided by? On which date was this disciplinary hearing held? And is it complete? You can also fill in any extra details, and obviously then also the outcome, and if there is any other information that you need to fill in there. If you just click on, let's just quickly put this in here again. Now once again, none of these fields are pink, so it's not required fields. You don't have to fill that in. It's just extra information. And there you go. You can actually then view that. You can also do a center. You can see this guy has, in the last 6 months, has had 2 verbal warnings already, and you can obviously keep track of that. You can also, if your company does issue out any equipment and you need to keep track of this equipment, you can go and specify here what was the condition that this tool was in that you went and allocated this guy. When did you allocate it to him? Did you actually get it back? And what was the the state of this, the condition of this tool when you actually got it back then? Was it in a worse condition than when you gave it to him? These things would also then, if you need to go and add any extra information, you can always check on these little screens. Usually you can right click and you can insert, and you can fill in information for extra equipment that you want to add to this list. I'm just going to select that, specify what time you gave it. If you do use serial numbers, if you've given these tools serial numbers, you can fill that in. There's the condition, whether it was in good, bad, or broken, or brand new, who it was issued by, when should he be returning this tool or this equipment, and has he returned it, and what condition it's been in. So that is basically also only used if you need to keep track of any equipment. You can fill this in. Once again, information that you put into the system, you can get out in a report again. You've got your history as well. This you can keep track of. Let's say this guy came in, started as a general worker, and he's been promoted now. In the next 3 months, he's been promoted to a manager. He's actually a very good worker, and now he's changed. His salary is now triple, and this employee is extremely happy about that. He doesn't need to work any notice periods, no more probation, and he's certainly not a temporary employee if he's a manager. You can put any extra information in terms of his job description, whether this is a contract worker. So if you're adding an employee and this is a contract worker, when does it actually start? Is it expected to end? When did it actually end? And then, what the contract status is. You can also fill in any extra comments for this employment history, and you've got your other tab as well. So this just keeps a record of this employee, every time you have a review perhaps, and you want to say, okay, fine, this guy has been promoted, or, this was that outcome. You've got your extra notes link on the left-hand side as well, which you can just go and add some extra information. You can link it to a document as well if you need to link that. You can obviously just save this then and go and browse for that that document and link that up then. also all just extra information that you can fill in. We come to the training tab then. If your employees go on regular training sessions and you'd like to actually keep track of that, you can go and add those training sessions in here. You can go and specify what course he was actually on. Once again, if you need to add anything, you can then add on these screens. Let's say this guy went for his managerial skills training now because he's been promoted. You can specify what the result was, how long was he on this course, and where it was, when does this expire, if that applies. You can also then pad in his certificate and just go and link that to a document then. And this will keep track of all his information, his training information. You can also, once again, print this out then in a report. If it isn't a default report, it can be written and customized for you. You also have a document section, once again, which you can just attach a whole lot of extra documents. If you need to, for some reason, you need to scan in his medical details, his contract or whatever that may be, you can actually add that information in here, and everything is in one place where you can then, because you can't always remember where everything's been saved, so you can link this up here and you can quickly go and check, oh wait, I need to find this document here. And that is pretty much the employee master file, or the Browse Employees as it's usually referred to, or sometimes like I refer to it, the Blue Man. That's easy enough. Like I said, 95% of the stuff can be found in this window. This is a very good place to start. If you're looking for something, come to the Blue Man. If you don't find it here, scream and shout. Thanks for joining us in this training session, and I hope to see you next time.